so far guys we have seen like how to create the app, right? So this was my local environment where I have you know created app and successfully tested also. So this is not my target to deploy this in the in the local environments. Instead of I'm going to deploy this in Kubernetes cluster, right? So here we go, right? So we already have one Kubernetes cluster, so let me take you through that. So you can do kubectl get. Let's verify it from the kops. Kop validate cluster. That's bad. Let me just re-export it. If you're creating a cluster, make sure like you're keeping this in the etc export or in the best archive, right? So we have three node cluster available here. One is called the master node, right? And this is T3 medium, and we have two nodes, worker nodes, and these are the T3 mediums too, right? So if you want to verify them more, right, you can directly log in. I have already shown you how you can log into those, right? You already have keys in .ssh, keep in them somewhere else and use them also. If you want to access any of your cluster node, let's say you're gonna go ahead and access your master node, get your public IP from here. You can just give admin at the rate IP. So I'm in the same location where I have key, so I do not need to give the -in key. It will automatically pick up the keys from here itself, right? So I'm able to log into the admin here to my master node, right? So now you can do a sudo sc-l here, and if you want to verify the components, you can do docker ps here. You'll be able to see here all the components that we was discussing earlier, right? You can make your screen bit smaller where you would when you would like to see them, right? So you'll see all the name here. This is the DNS controller, COPS controller, POS AMD. So there will be so many controller would be deployed there, right? API server, scheduler, right? Kube proxy and Kube API server, Kube scheduler, Kube etcd manager, and confident hopper, right? You'll be able to see all of your component likewise because we have deployed through the COPS, so all the components will be in the form of pod. Remember this, right? So you can verify your components like this, right? But to managing the cluster, you do not need to uh, go inside the cluster. You can do all the deployments from the outside itself, right? Where we have the kubectl agent installed. At this moment, if you see, we don't have any deployments. We do not have any. We have not done any deployments in any of the cluster, right? So the first I am going to deploy one application here that we have just built, right? So I have given it a name, hello.yml, right? I'm not going to make more confusion for you. And one more thing I would like to explain it, the Docker file we created, if you remember it, right? I have also placed one sample.war with that only to deploy it. Remember this. So whenever you are creating the Docker file, also make sure you with the Docker file, keep your sample.war file also to deploy this sample.war, right? So next, I would like to explain a bit about the YAML file, the YAML file structure we have in the Kubernetes, right? So I'm just going to copy this one at this moment here, and let's go here and right. So I am going to remove a couple of things. Let's say here, I'm not going to remove anything, right? In every Kubernetes YAML file, you will see four things, right? So a couple of things like API version, specifications, right? And you know these are basically selectors and so many things would be there. I'll keep on explaining them with the time. So the first thing is the API version. The second is kind, right? What kind of deployments you are going to do. We'll understand this also. The next is metadata, right? And the specification. Okay. Right. So a couple of things, right? Always you will see API version, you will see the kind, you'll see the metadata, and you'll see the specification. So every Kubernetes configuration file, I mean YAML file, you will see, you'll always see these things default, right? The first is API version, right? API version is nothing but the things you are going to do, right? If I go here in the Google and let me quickly explain a couple of the API versions. So you can get the cheat sheet from here for the APIs, right? What all APIs you can use. So these are the APIs for you, right? Slowly you will start learning those, you'll start understanding these things also. I was looking for the list, but I think I'm not sure if that is available here. Okay, that's fine. Gradually I'll explain those things. So the API version first is nothing but what you are going to do. Are you going to deploy containers, or are you going to deploy pods? Are you going to do deployments? Are you going to create services, or so on and so forth? So everything you are doing, for that we have one API here which is called app slash, this is here you see apps slash v1, but it may be anything. I'll show you I will give you the cheat sheet of those things, right? The next is called the deployment. That means again, you'll be able to understand it once we gradually move forward. The first is called deployments. When you are doing the deployments, I'll explain more about the deployments later. So this is just going to create your containers differently, like all the containers, right? You would have heard about the pods in the Kubernetes, right? Most of the time we are in confusion, like what is pod, right? A pod is basically kind of a logical segmentation, right? And one pod can hold multiple containers, right? But in deployments, we will have a separate containers, right? Which is basically recommended for the production too, right? Most of the time you will not use the pods. Instead of, you will use the deployments for creating your pods. That's what we are doing here. We'll gradually understand it more. The next is metadata. The metadata is nothing but what labels and specifications you want to give to that. So whatever the deployment you are doing, you are going to give one name to it, which is called the hello world. You can give anything to it, right? As per your application name choose. The next is called the specification. What all the specifications you are going to use. So we are giving the selectors here, selectors, match labels, and we are saying run, and we are giving it one name called the load balancer. So selectors, match labels are nothing, but anyhow, whenever you are creating some of the services and you want to match them, right, with couple of things, so you can use those things here. The next is replicas. How many replicas you are going to create, means how many pods you need, how many containers you need. That's called the replica here. The next is called the templates, right? Templates, you can give something, the same thing we are giving here. If you see the load balancer thing, in templates you can give what is the metadata fields, right? If some labels are there, so you can call up those labels here. And the next is very essential, which is called the specifications. Again, in a specification we are going to create containers, and the name would be hello world, and the image you are going to take, and the ports you are going to open, right? And the protocol type, right? So each and every deployments you are going to do in the production, you are going to go do through these YML files only. So you have to understand these things only. What is the API version, kind, metadata, and specifications, right? So let's go ahead and deploy this application that we have just created, right? So I will go to Docker Hub, right? And we'll take this image, right? And I'm going to my file here. Alright, so let's go inside this hello file and replace my image here. So couple of things. API is deployment, right? What we are going, API version tells what we are going to do. We are going to do a kind deployment. The deployment will have a separate containers, and there are so many benefits. We'll discuss about them later. Metadata is hello world, so the name of the metadata would be hello world. Specifications, right? The match label would be load hyphen balancer hyphen example. To replica would be there, and in specification we have specified we are creating containers, and containers names is hello world, and the image would be picked up from the Docker hub, and this would be the image, and these will be the ports we will be exposing here. So go ahead and deploy this file here, kubectl apply -f and your file name, and you have successfully created the deployments here. If you see, right, if you want to see your deployments, you can do kubectl get deployment. It will pull the deployment you have done. So far you see the 0 containers are ready, but we have 2 and up to date are 2, right? So if you want to see the pods, right, kubectl get pod, like what is the status of pod? Now you can see the pod has started running already, right? The pod has already been created here. Again, if I go back and check the deployment, you see guys, the deployment is ready. The containers has been successfully deployed here, right? And let's do deployment again, right? So you can also describe these deployment and see what all the properties those have, these deployments have. kubectl describe deployment, and you can give the name of the deployment whatever you are doing, right? And you will get all the details of that specification containers that we have given in the XML file, right, that we have created. If you see here, when you describe this deployment, you see here the name is hello world. It is taking the default namespace. We will talk about the namespaces later. The creation timestamp is this. Labels are nothing because we have not given any label. Annotations are deployment.kubernetes.io revision 1. So these are basically the annotation of the APIs, right? The selector is run equals to load balancer, example this. And how many replicas we have? We have a 2 desired, right? 2 updated, 2 total counts, 2 available, and 0 unavailable. Strategy type is rolling update. We can also have the rolling updates here. Rolling update strategy 25% max unavailability, 25% max service. Right? Some couple of more thing about the pod templates. Right? What templates we have used for pod? We are using label this, and containers name we are giving hello world. Image we are taking this. The port we are opening is this. Right? Host port 0. We have not opened any host port anything at this moment. We have not attached any volumes also, right? Some conditions here, no conditions also. Again, couple of things, type, status, and reason. Available true, minimum replica set scale available, progressing true, new replica set available. That means even if any of our pod is getting down and getting deleted, the Kubernetes will take care of those things also, right? The next, if you see here, new replica sets, this, right? And you see what all things are there, right? This is the scaling replica set, and this is the age of this 59 second, and deployment containers, scale up replica controller hello world, and these are at least 2 containers at this point, right? So these are the things we have at this moment. And if you go more, kubectl get pods, you can see pods are there, right? If anyway you want to log into those pods, I have already explained them how you can log into those pods. Kubectl exec-it. Guys, give me one moment, please. Sorry for the delay. Okay. So, right, if you want to navigate inside those, right, you can see now you are inside the container, right? This is the home path of the container. If you want to verify something, If you want to see the web apps and deployment, and if you want to verify something, here it is, everything is there, right? So far guys, what we have done, we have successfully deployed our Kubernetes cluster, and we have successfully deployed one hello world, I mean one sample word Tomcat application in the Kubernetes cluster, right? Now guys, time comes to expose these applications, right? So the exposing application is the essential thing in the, you know, Kubernetes cluster. Otherwise, how you will access those applications, right? How you are going to make the availability of the application to outside of the world, or even you are accessing from the inside only, right? So exposing application is the main thing in the Kubernetes. Remember this, right? So now, as I have deployment, so most basically you will see we will be doing the expose, right? We will be creating services on the three bases here, right? If I do here kubectl get services, you will see the cluster IP only. All of your, by default, you will see the cluster IP here, and the deployment type you will see the cluster, and this is the cluster IP, right? And you can see the 443 port is open here only, right? So guys, we have a most basically, right, while you start working in the prod or in your organization, you will see either you will use the three kinds of services to expose your application. The first is load balancer, the second is node port, and the fourth is the cluster IP itself, right? So I will show you one by one with the examples. I'll not make you more confused on understanding these three. You'll understand those automatically when we'll see that, right? So I will go with the load balancer first, right? In load balancer, guys, what it will do is the Kubernetes will provision a load balancer for you to expose your application outside, right? And your application will be accessible from all across the world using that load balancer, right? So let's go ahead and deploy this service now. I will do kubectl expose deployment, because I'm going to expose this deployment that I have created, right? And what is the name of the deployment? You'll have to give the name of the deployment here, which is called the hello.word hyphen hyphen type. What type of you know uh, expose you are going to do? I will say I will do a load balancer, right? Hyphen hyphen name. You can give name to it. So let's give it a name. I will call it f hyphen service lb. So you can see what we have done is we have exposed this application, right? And we have given it a name app service. So now let's go ahead and kubectl get service. Oh, that's very quick, right? So if you see here, guys, it has given us one load balancer here, right? One load balancer IP to us. And so if you go outside, right, you should be able to access it. So let's curl first here. We already have curl right here. Okay, it is not resolvable yet because it will be creating one load balancer. It would be creating a load balancer for you in the backend here. So if we go to the load balancer here, so yes, do you see, guys, you have not created it, everything has been done there. When you created the services, so it automatically created one load balancer, created target as per your requirement, everything, right? You see all the nodes and everything has been added to the cluster automatically. So that's good. I see the it's in services now, but still the host not resolvable. So most probably we will not have the ports open also. So let's go ahead and open the port first. Let's go to instances. Let's go to security group. So that's basically not recommended to make it public, and do it as per your requirement. But at this moment, I'll make it public. So let's go to the master one first, and let's open the inbound port. I'm going to open 8080 here. Let's open it from anywhere. Let's go ahead and save this. Let's go to the nodes and do the same here. Here we go. Add the rule 8080. Let's open it from everywhere and let's go ahead and save it. Right. So, couple of things about the services also. Right. You can see more. You can describe these services. You can go ahead kubectl describe service. You can give the service name. Right. It will explain more things to you. The name app service, right? The type selector is this, right? And the type of the expose is load balancer. The IP of the load balancer is this. The load balancer is ingress load balancer, and the port open is 8080. Target ports are also 8080, right? And you can see the endpoints here, right? 8080 and this. I mean 4 and 3. Right, so you can see here we have basically in endpoints we have a two boxes here, right, and basically here we can see two services there, like two endpoints, right? That's how, like, you know when we was talking about services, right, last time. So these endpoints only help you, like, if you see one of the pod has been deleted and generated automatically, it will add it to the on endpoints, right? And you can see here, if you see down, and you can see these are the two services which are running there. So that's fine for now. Let's go ahead and again, let's do the curl and see if the service is running now. Let me copy this. Let me paste this here too. Sometimes it might take some time, but not that much. So you can wait for some time.
सर
Yes, Kapil?
ट्रिगर सर ये इंग्रेस जो आपने लिया है इसमें होस्ट क्या लेते हैं जो इसकी इंग्रेस की फाइल लिखी है आपने
एक minute, Kapil. So let's re-verify that. So again, just go ahead and give the 8080. That should come up. Okay, you can see, the URL is now accessible for us, right? You can see the page is reading. In the same, if you search it from the outside, you can see the load balancer is working fine, and your application is accessible also, right? This is called the, how we are, you know we have exposed our application using the load balancer, right? So I will remove this now, and I'll show you by the another way how we can expose the application. Let me delete this kubectl delete service and service name. So the service is gone now. Okay, so if you see, there is no service now, right, that we have deployed. So